So this is, tonight, there'll be a little bit too of, and I hope this is all right with you guys, I'll speak candidly. A lot of my experiences in this area obviously pertain to our youth, our students. I was youth pastor here, became youth pastor, most of you know this, but I became youth pastor here while I was still in college at Evangel. And it's this weird dynamic as a youth pastor, although every youth pastor I know is a little bit different, but it's a weird dynamic for me where it was like, they were my friends. Some of my best friends were in the youth group. Nobu, who's in charge now, Josh Fong, he was like my best friend, but also like my kids. But I was fresh out of college too. And I was experiencing a lot of things that we're going to be talking about, that you have been talking about, that we're looking at, that many times you experience as, you know, you get your own kids and you raise them up. I was experiencing them, and many times a lot of first-time events with your kids. And so I'm not using any names, but if I tell a story, these stories are from students you know. And it makes it that much more real. And they're things that unfortunately, I don't know how they could, but like it's almost impossible in Bible school to prepare you for like some of these moments, you know. I remember the very first time that I had a student, one of our students, and it was an attempted suicide case. I had a bunch of kids in the youth group. They were all calling me, texting me. They're all freaking out. And they're saying so-and-so. They posted some stuff on social media. They sent us some, I think at the time Snapchat was the thing. And they sent us some snaps, and it just feels very weird. It's kind of some going away stuff, some goodbye stuff. Can't get a hold of the student. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do. You know, I was fresh out of college. There's a part of me that's kind of like, this kid has kind of joked around about some stuff in the past. You know, the things that we're seeing, it's not overt. I could see it in that direction, but I'm just not sure what this is. We couldn't get a hold of him eventually, got a hold of the student. I'm talking to him, and he's barely saying anything over the phone. Kind of like shutting down a little bit, one-word answers every once in a while. And it got to the point, as I always do this, anytime that there's any risk to the student, anything that's serious like this, I told them your parents need to know. You never like that. Surprise, surprise. But I always tell them, I was like, I want you to tell your parents about what's going on. That you were going to try and kill yourself tonight. You need to tell them. They don't want to do that. They obviously never want to do that. And I always tell them, like, either you're going to tell them or I'm going to tell them. And I 100% guarantee you it is so much better if you tell them. I'll even go with you, but I want you to be the one to talk with them about this. I said, all right, fine, I'll tell them. And so he went and talked with his parents, and I followed up afterwards, like, hey, did you have a talk with so-and-so, and kind of connected with them briefly. And then I was with him the next week, and I don't tell you this to say, man, parents, you guys are horrible, or anything like that, but just to show just how important this is. And honestly, I think how lost many times we feel with regards to this. I asked the student the following Wednesday, because he had one quick conversation where he had told them, this is what I was going to do, this is what happened. I said, you know, did you talk with your parents after? Did your parents come and talk to you about that? He said, no. No, we haven't talked about it. Asked him the next week, no, nothing. And I don't like blame or mad at the parents or anything, because honestly, I just think that so often with regards to things like this, and there's a few other issues that I've ran into as youth pastor, that just like as parents, I just feel like we're just so ill-equipped, or we're not sure what to do. Many times there's just a lot of denial. A lot of, that's not actually my kid. I've had students, and I don't know what Pastor Ted has shared, but I've had students before where there's a lot of cutting. I know what that is. You can tell me that you ran into a fence. I'm like, that's not what that is. I know exactly what that is. And a parent will be in complete denial that that's what that is. I'm like, that's exactly what that is. And it's just, it's hard for us to like process that. And of course, you know, not my kid, but it's such a real thing. Again, I remember the first time that I had one of our young girls, and she came and she told me, and sorry, sometimes I get emotional when I think about this stuff. But she told us, that she had been sexually abused, and she was experiencing a lot of severe depression and mental issues because of it. And it just kind of wrecks you. And there's a part of you also that just doesn't even want to have to think about it, because we just don't know what to do. We don't know how to act. And how do you be there for a person? It's also hard because for me, I'm like, I know there's legal stuff that goes into this, but like, I need to be there for her and what she's going through. This is so real, and it's having major implications in her life. Beyond even just what happened and what now she's going through and her. Anyway, it's just, I don't know what to do. And I think so often we just don't know what to do, and so we put it to the wayside, and we don't handle things probably in the way that we should. And there's also this aspect where I think many of us, we recognize that culture is culture is very counterproductive to building grit and resiliency in our young people. And we hear that a lot. In fact, the older generation points the finger at the younger generation and says, you guys are a bunch of, I don't know, what are the words? I've heard squib from Australia. What were you going to say?
Snowflakes.
Yeah, snowflakes, and it's just frustrating. And there's truth to it. But unfortunately, just pointing it out and having that attitude about it surprisingly doesn't solve the problem. But there is truth that they don't have grit, they don't have resiliency. And some of the stuff that's hitting them with social media and culture and everything is really kind of allowing them to stay in they're not really moving forward, because how do you build grit or resiliency? You experience hardship, you overcome it. And as you do that throughout your life, you become more resilient, right? And so that's not happening for our young people. They're not learning how to maybe overcome these things, even small things. And so you'll see in teenagers, maybe even older teenagers, maybe even college students, that there will be little things, and we're even going to maybe look at it a little bit tonight, but there sometimes will be little things. I had sometimes with some of our juniors or seniors where they would be in the depths of despair. They are sobbing. There'd be times where we would get calls at 2 a.m. Anna and I. I'm like, what's going on? And sobbing and panicking. And when I find out what the thing is that pushed them over the line, I'm like ready to murder the kid, because I'm like, this is stupid. This is nothing. This is not worth the reaction that I feel I'm getting from an 18-year-old, kind of a thing. But for them, it's so real. And I know they haven't been equipped in the right way and built the grit resiliency that when things happen and hardships, and they will come in life, you will be betrayed by people you love, you will be hurt, people will pass away. I mean, there's things that will happen, and it just pushes them over the edge. And so much of what we're talking about and what you guys are looking at is kind of trying to equip us with some tools so that we can equip our young people, and it's not just applicable to young people, but that we can equip them with some of the grit and the resiliency that they need, Just complaining about it, just complaining about the younger generation, it doesn't work. It doesn't magically make it all better. And so today I'm kind of excited. We're going to be talking about really some great kind of just hands-on looking at interacting with somebody who is probably struggling with whether it's mental issues or just heightened emotions. I don't know if you've caught on or if we've talked about it, but through this series we'll use the word despair a lot instead of depression. Have you guys talked about that or caught on to that? Did they mention that? Pastor Ted did? And that's purposeful, because the depression word's thrown around so much, even many times when a kid is not experiencing depression. But despair, they all go through despair, and they don't know how to handle despair. And so we want to equip them to handle despair. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to watch this week's video, to Will this week, and then we're going to dialogue a little bit about it, have some turn and talks, have some opportunity, and to do something that you are going to feel is so stupid, but we're going to do it anyways, okay? We're going to do it, and maybe it will be done. Permission to fail, all right? That's okay. But I think that maybe it can be helpful in us actually going home and trying this out with our kids. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's play that video, and then we'll move on.
Welcome back to Mental Health, a parent
parent's guide for every kid. Have you ever asked your kids to do something that you felt was simple, like, hey, can you take out the trash? But they react as if you've asked them to climb Mount Everest with their bare hands. One day I asked my 9-year-old son Liam to clean his room. He had just finished school and I was working in my home office. Liam protested, "But Dad, I was hoping that we could play Legos together." I replied, "Buddy, I can't do that right now, I'm sorry. I told you earlier that you would have to clean your room today, so it's time to clean your room." "But Dad," Liam began to dig in. I could see that we were starting a little bit of a power tug of war. So I decided to break the cycle by incentivizing my ask. I said, "Hey, listen, I'll give you $3 if you clean your room, but if you don't, you'll owe me $3 from your piggy bank." I knew that he was saving up for something he wanted, so I felt like this was a safe bet. But a few minutes later, Liam called my bluff. He came into my office with $3, threw him on the desk, and said, "Here you go." I explained to him that I didn't actually want his money. I was just trying to encourage him to clean his room, and that I still wanted him to clean his room. He began to complain and protest. "Can you just help me clean my room?" "No, I have work to do. I'm really sorry." "But Dad, I can't do it alone." The drama began. My tone changed even more as I lost my cool in this moment. "Liam, I'm done talking about this. Go clean your room." He stormed off. A few minutes later, Liam returned, this time with all of his money from his piggy bank. Tearfully, he threw it towards me and shouted, "Take all my money, take it all, if that's what it takes to spend time with you." And it was in that moment, with dollar bills and 1,000 pennies scattered across my lap, that I saw things clearly. I could see him. I looked deeper than the disobedient behavior. I could see a little boy desperately trying to communicate a need for connection. Helping kids with emotional processing is uncomfortable for many of us, especially men who tend to avoid dealing with their emotions. And listen, I get it. Raising my kids and using these tools that we've been sharing with you in this course has been some of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. You see, I didn't grow up with a dad. I hadn't even seen a picture of my dad until I met him when I was 25 years old. So I have no context of what a dad looks like, not even a bad one. On top of that, naturally, I'm not an emotional person. My hardwiring is set for a ton of logical processing. And I prefer to believe that emotions, especially my own, are not valid unless they're logical. In some ways, that's not all bad. After all, not all feelings should be acted upon, right? All feelings, though, should be acknowledged. Growth happens when we learn how to recognize feelings and discern how to act on them appropriately. However, I've learned my kids don't care if their feelings are logical. All they know is I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm angry. And the only question they have in those moments is, do you see me? When it comes to parenting our kids, it's important to see beyond the behavior, to see the emotion. Easier said than done, right? Life is moving incredibly fast, and sometimes you just need them to do what you said without all the drama. The problem is, an emotionally activated brain can't receive left brain logic. Let me explain it another way. Suppose your 15-year-old daughter comes home from school. Visibly upset, she throws her backpack down and kicks her shoes across the room. You immediately start to think, I've told her 1,000 times not to kick her shoes like that and throw her backpack on the floor. So you respond, what is going on? To which your 15-year-old begins to unload about her failed test earlier in the day. I failed my test and can't believe it. Maybe she starts to blame the teacher because after all, it's always the teacher's fault. And the teacher didn't give us the right study guide and on and on and on. So you respond, honey, you failed your test? Well, I'm not surprised. I asked you if you had studied and you kept texting your friends yesterday and playing on that tickety-tock dance app. And you know what, you might even throw in a little zinger. Like, you know, God only helps those who help themselves. At this point, your 15-year-old daughter will roll her eyes and say, you just don't understand. But what she's really saying is, you don't see me. You see, left brain logic is needed to be a great parent. but timing matters. Here's what I want to suggest. Meet right brain with right brain and meet left brain with left brain. In other words, when you see a right brain emotionally activated kid, meet right brain energy with right brain energy. Meet them right where they are with emotion and empathy. This doesn't mean that we don't lead them to make wise choices or take responsibility, or in the case of our example, lead them to achieve their best grades. It simply means that we don't do it first. So here's how this might look with meeting right brain with right brain. Your 15-year-old daughter comes home from school visibly upset, she throws her backpack down, kicks her shoes across the room, and you start thinking the same thoughts. I've told her 1,000 times not to do that, blah, blah, blah. So you respond, what is going on? To which your 15-year-old daughter begins to unload about her failed test earlier in the day. But this time, you think all those same logical and true thoughts. You just leave them in the back of your mind instead, and you activate your right brain. It may sound something like, oh, honey, you failed your test? Oh, I'm so sorry. You must feel really disappointed. Come sit down, tell me about it. Let me get you a drink of water. Tell me more. This time you meet her with empathy. After all, if you failed a big presentation or bombed a project at work, wouldn't you feel disappointed too, regardless of how you got there? And that's exactly where your 15-year-old daughter is in that moment. And when we choose to meet right brain with right brain, we allow that right brain energy to kind of decrease. Then we're able to engage left brain logic later. We can ask questions about steps that they can take or what they can do to accomplish a better grade next time. But this may take 10 minutes, or it may be a conversation for later. When we slow down to see them, to see beyond the behavior, to see the emotion, our kids will feel understood. And the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety or stress, but to help our kids cope and manage it. When we do this, we help our kids grow and develop an ability for emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is a key part of development, and there are things that we can do to help our kids learn how to regulate their emotions in every phase. It's important to note that it's normal for children to have fears or worries that come and go throughout their life. Feeling anxious or worried is part of being human. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong. So the goal isn't to teach your kids not to feel anxious, fear, or worry. The goal is to teach them how to regulate those emotions. For instance, when your child faces feelings of anxiety or disappointment in the elementary phase, it may look more like they just seem irritable or angry. It could also include trouble sleeping or physical symptoms like fatigue, headaches, and stomach aches. And just like every phase, we want to help our kids at this phase to identify their feelings. For instance, perhaps your 5-year-old is afraid of her next doctor's appointment, knowing that she has a shot due. You may say, I can see that you're really scared, and that's okay. I'm here and I will be with you. In the preteen or teenager phase, anxiety may look like irritability, trouble concentrating, feeling self-conscious about bodily changes or image, withdrawal from social activity, avoidance of difficult or new situations, or maybe even constant complaints about stomach aches or headaches. This is a great phase to use a feelings wheel to help your kid express and identify emotions that they're feeling. Identifying emotions and sharing them with a trusted person are helpful to learning how to emotionally regulate. So what is a feelings wheel? A feelings wheel is a tool to help recognize and talk about feelings. It's a helpful aid to emotionally exhale. By identifying core and easily identifiable emotions, then connecting them to more complex secondary emotions. This will help kids to recognize emotions that your child may or may not realize that they're feeling. So how do we use it? Start in the inner circle with the 6 easily identifiable emotions. Then ask yourself, or have your teenager ask themselves, what is the secondary emotion that I'm feeling? And you may feel more than one, and that's okay. Take some time to process, to journal, or to talk to someone that you trust about the feeling that you're feeling. You can download the feelings wheel and check out the workbook for more information. This is a great way to jumpstart the conversation. We'll see you in the next video.
want to jump into a few things here. And by the way, if you were like me, and the first time you saw him talk about that feelings wheel thing, you thought, this is dumb. You're not totally wrong. However, we're going to look at it here in just a second. Because it seems like such a ridiculous thing. But with what we're going to talk about here, with where some students are at, it is a very great tool, and I have used it with several of your kids when they do not know how to express what they are feeling, and they call, they're in heightened emotion state, they're panicky, and we're going to get into that here in a second. I pulled the thing out, and it's actually been a valuable little thing that we've gone through and done. So in a second here, we're going to pass those out. Before that, some of the stuff that he mentioned there that I think is important for us to understand. One, tell this to students all the time, that emotions are not a bad thing, right? Emotions are a good thing. And in fact, I don't really know that there's any emotions that I would point to and say, like, God didn't make that, or that's bad. God created emotions. Is there some, oh, you going to pass those out? Don't pass them out just yet, though. Yeah, wait for a second. Emotions are a good thing. In fact, we'll tell students a lot. Like, students will come, they'll talk with Anna and I after service, or they'll call us, and many times what I'll want to do, and in fact what I did several times when I first started as youth pastor, they don't like what they're feeling, right? It's a negative emotion. They're feeling frustrated, they're feeling despair, they're feeling betrayed, whatever it may be, and we want to not feel that way. Right? And in fact, as a leader, many times I would try and spin the conversation in a way that would try and, like, in the end, I'm like, man, success is if they leave this conversation happy. We succeeded. And I realized over time that that is not the case. And in fact, now I'll tell students, they'll come, they'll be feeling down, they don't want to feel that way, they'll tell me what happened, and I'll let them know what you are feeling right now is exactly the way you should be. I was like, when somebody that you love betrays you, somebody you love stabs you in the back. Something happened at school, some drama, their friend did this or that. They feel really hurt by it. Something happens at home. A parent said this or that. They feel hurt by it. Whatever it may be, I say you should feel that way. If you have somebody you love stab you in the back and hurt you, not actually, you guys understand what I'm saying, right? But like betrays you, and you feel nothing, then you are probably a psychopath, I tell them. And one day, you're going to murder a lot of people. And they kind of laugh at that. But, like, it's very true. Like, it's these responses that we have are proper responses, right? When a student has despair in their life because of something that happened to them, that's what you're supposed to be experiencing right now. It's just that with the left brain, right brain stuff that we're going to get into in a second, you need to learn how to overcome that and manage those emotions. And so, even a lot of times, I've had a lot of students that will have certain feelings, or they're experiencing something, and they misinterpret what that feeling or what that emotion is telling them. A great example is probably the number one thing that pops up a whole lot with students, and it always blew my mind because we had a pretty close-knit youth group. And we go to youth camp, and we get to a point where we'd say, like, hey, what is the thing that you're afraid of the most? And 80% of the group would say being alone. Feel alone all the time. Feel lonely. And what is that feeling telling you? Because I believe that that's a God-given feeling that is trying to tell us something, right? And what I think that feeling is telling you when you feel alone, are you guys ready to do the backwards hat thing? Is that too, like, I'm not wearing a suit or anything, but okay. They feel alone. They feel like, hey, like what that means, I believe, is that you need community. And you need people around you. And God created family. He created the church. And when a person feels alone, I think that is God's way. The proper way to interpret that is that's God's way of, like, telling you, you need people in your life. You need people around you. Students feel that. Many people feel that. And they misinterpret it. And they say, that means nobody loves me, and nobody cares. And that's a lie of the enemy, right? But they get these feelings, these negative feelings especially, don't like them, don't experience them, misinterpret what they're meaning, and it's this downward spiral they find themselves in. What we need to help them understand is, those of us especially as we've gone through life and we've experienced the woes of life, and we've gone through those times of mourning and hurting, and those are proper responses to many situations. And so a lot of times, you wouldn't want to go in and say you shouldn't be feeling this way. Now, sometimes there's such ridiculous things that it's like, you probably shouldn't be feeling this way. But for some reason, this is like tilting this kid, whatever the situation is, you know? I've had a young person come in, and they're just so frustrated, and they're just so mad, and I'm thinking, man, like, did their boyfriend, you know, cheat on them with somebody else, and they're mad this spring, you know, we went out to eat together at this ice cream shop, and I ordered my ice cream, and it was there, and they are, like, livid, like they're about to murder somebody, and it was there as my ice cream. I was gonna take a picture and put it on Instagram, and Jocelyn, her friend or whatever like that, took a picture of my ice cream and posted it to her Instagram before I could take a picture and post it to my Instagram. What's next? Like, you know, kind of a thing. And I'm like, what? This is so dumb. You know, kind of a thing. But like, you know, she took a picture of her ice cream, posted it on her Instagram before and for some reason, it pushed her beyond, and she's just feeling all this despair and stuff like that. And often, especially early on in ministry, I would just tell them, like, you are so dumb. That's so ridiculous. And if you have a really great relationship with kids, sometimes that's not the totally wrong response, but more often than not, we really do need to do, and it is so successful when you can just listen. He says, the way they say it here is, you know, they want to be seen, do you see me? But just really listening whenever they're in a heightened response moment. You know, he talked a little bit about the left brain, right brain, when he was talking about this, because I went to a retreat where he was at, I was thinking of several of your kids, and I was like, this makes so much sense. Because the way that it goes is, you know, they got this right brain, high emotions, and what's happening is that many of our kids, especially some we're talking about with the counter-production with culture and not teaching them to be resilient and process through their emotions, these two sides of the brain, they're not connecting. Right? So this happens actually for all of us on a pretty daily basis. Let's say you're in a room and you hear a very loud crash, a loud bang. Something, I mean, it's loud, it's super loud. Almost every one of us, there's an immediate flight or up to because you couldn't just unfollow, cancel, unsubscribe, and then they're not a part of your life anymore. Your children, teenagers, have relationships with people solely online, and it's weird. And I'm not saying that it's the same, I'm not even saying that it's as healthy as a face-to-face relationship, but they will subscribe to people on YouTube, they will watch people on Twitch, they will be a part of an online community, and they feel like they belong to that place. And they feel, and I would even maybe say that they do have a relationship with that Twitch streamer, that YouTuber. And it doesn't quite make sense to me, but somehow, they feel like that person is like, and they listen to what that person says. And they'll even type in the chat and stuff like that, and stuff will, you know, come. And so they'll feel like they have these relationships, but as soon as that person, some scandal comes out about that person, unfollow, and it kind of hurts them, but they don't deal with it, they don't process it or anything. So there's a whole lot that goes into it. Some kids actually have some very serious stuff going on. That would have been the case even when you were a teenager, where they're not able, even at an older age, to process some of this stuff. But I think especially during the older elementary and middle school years, this is very normal, I think. And again, with some of the stuff we're talking about, when you help them to make some of those connections, and as parents, you're able to work through some of these things with them. Once those connections are there, they're used, and they use them again, and they use them again, and they use them again, and you know, you start building, and that's that resiliency and that grit on a very like neurological, I'm not a scientist, whatever, neurological level, it's like taking place. And so you just want to help them, you want to help them as a parent to kind of make some of that stuff. And so again, the right brain, left brain stuff that's happening, we experience that a lot with our students. They just, I don't know. And that was where many times we would actually use this feelings wheel. Do you want to go ahead and pass that out now, just one to every person? So here's the feelings wheel thing. And again, this is not something that you need to whip out every single time your kid is like, although I do know there are some students, we have had some students where this has been such an issue that I have given this feelings wheel to their parents, and they use it every single time there's an issue, because their kid was really, really struggling with this. The point of this feelings wheel, you'll see it here, is I'd be in a situation with a young person, would be talking through, they'd be blang, everything that's, whatever it is, the situation that's going on with them right now. And I'd be asking them, trying to help them maybe make some of those connections. And I just keep getting that I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so what I would do is I would tell them, and I'd be honest with them. I'd say, hey, I want to do something with you here. This may seem ridiculous to you, but I believe that you're in a place right now that you would admit you don't want to be. Where you're at right now, it's not good, and you're not able to come down from there, and I want to help you do that. And so I want you to look at this wheel right here with me. I want you to start in the very center, and I just want you to pick one of those 6. Are there 6 there, I think, right? Yes. I'd say I just want you to pick one of those 6. You can think about it for a while. You don't need to take a long, you don't need to take a short time. I want you to pick one of those 6 right there. Which one most describes you feel how you're feeling right now? And I would sit there sometimes with a kid, I kid you not, for 20 minutes while they stared at it. 20 minutes, I'm not exaggerating. If I was exaggerating, I'd say an hour. It was literally like 20 minutes, it felt like an hour. Because I would just sit there and I would wait. I'd be quiet. And in my head, I'm like, there are 6 options. Like, I could probably pick the one you're feeling right now. Like, angry, is that one of them? I don't know, like, just like, I like, and they would sit there and they'd stare at it, and they'd finally look up at me and they'd pick one of them. Probably the one I knew they were gonna pick. I think I feel angry. Okay, go out after that one. And again, I don't have the one in front of me. I don't know if angry's mine's so small. Can I get one actually? Hey, thanks, sorry. Mad, sorry, I'm angry. They say I'm mad. I say, okay, I want you to go out from there. I want you to pick one. You can pick 2 if you want. Just look at them, take your time. And again, these are for some of the kids who are really struggling with some of this mental issue stuff, where their brain is not operating. I'm literally in this process right here. It takes us like a half hour to an hour. I'm helping them in that moment to make some of those connections because they're thinking about what's going on in that right side of their brain there. And they're actually putting some words to it. And so then they take an obnoxiously long amount of time to finally say, I feel humiliated. And the thing about that is, when they are thinking about the word that describes how they're feeling, inevitably they are having to think about why they're feeling the way they feel. Right? That's helping them to process this, because they're going back and they're thinking, my friend at school, they did this. It made me feel humiliated whenever that happened. They took a picture that I didn't want them to take. They texted it to the guy they had a crush on. They thought it was funny. You feel humiliated. And so they're processing it, right? So you kind of get that? And so again, you're helping to equip them with some of these things where they're thinking about it. The goal would be that by the time they graduate and they leave our houses, that they are resilient enough to work through the hardships of life, because they will come. Right? We know they will come, and we want to protect our kids, but I tell parents all the time, in fact, some of you in the room, I've jokingly said this to you, but I was very serious. I wasn't joking. When you come to me and your kid's being bullied or something like that, or you're coming to me and there's issues, and I've jokingly said, your kid needs to be bullied a little bit, or they need to experience them, or something's going on, and I've told you, like, hey, this is actually a very good thing. This bad thing that's happening to your student or this kid or whatever like that, because they have to experience some of that stuff while they're with you, and you can help work through some of those hardships with them and help equip them to say, like, otherwise you shelter them in such a perfect way that they leave and they had a perfectly joyous life. They will bomb in college, right? And they will fall so fast, so hard. I remember some of those kids in college that came, and they lived like on a farm and were homeschooled, and they were weird. And it's just like, college does not do them good. They just, because they are not equipped, right? And so again, not a horrible thing when your kid comes home and it kills you. It does kill you, kind of a thing. But you're teaching them how to live life and how to think through these things. And that's why, man, to have the patience and the love to just work through these things with them, to listen to them and to really listen, and not let, especially sometimes, your gut reaction to be to correct the behavior. I tend to be the authoritarian very much, and Anna has to catch me because my gut reaction, even with my 2-year-old, is, you will obey me, child, kind of a thing. And that is disrespectful, I do that, but sometimes you do need to just, not even sometimes, man, especially with where our kids are right now, you need to listen, you need to love them, and you need to make sure, because sometimes the trap can be if you do that too often, especially as a youth pastor, I started to do this a lot. It feels really good when you're listening to them and they respond well to it, and it feels like you're on the same page and you're their friend, and then at the end I don't want to bring up what I really need to bring up, kind of some of that let's correct behavior stuff. And you have to make sure that you come and you bring that truth in at the end. And many times it can come in the form of just asking questions. And they get it. You know, the kid threw their shoes down, they came in, they failed their test, whatever, and you hear them, you listen, man, that is such a bummer, I'm so sorry that you failed that test. That's true, you are sorry they failed that test. You know, I'm so sorry that you failed that test. They go on and they talk about the mixed up study guide. That's so frustrating when stuff feels like it's not given to you in the right way. I totally get that. And then eventually you get to a point where you say, hey, is there anything that you could have done, you know, to do better? Well, I maybe could have studied yesterday when you told me to. Yeah, that would have been good. You know, kind of. And they're literally, you can lead them kind of with some coaching techniques to the answer that you want to give them, you know, kind of a thing. And so this feelings wheel, you guys can all take this home, and a few of you want some extra ones. Again, this isn't every single kid, this isn't every situation. I have found there's been more often times that I've used it where I was surprised that kids will do it with you. They will. I've had many students across all ages get out, even seniors in high school, and they know. I'll sit down with them and they're like, you know, we're in the middle of the conversation, they're like, can you get the feelings wheel out? I'm like, yeah, here we go. And they're sitting there and they're staring at it for too long a time, you know. But like sometimes it can be very helpful, kind of a thing. And so it's just a tool to help them start thinking and processing about some of that stuff. So again, one of the big challenges that we're going to lead with today is like how we respond when we have somebody, whether it's our kid or somebody else, and this heightened emotional response. You know, the case where the kid comes home and they're frustrated, they're mad, and they throw their backpack in their shoes. How do we respond in that moment? Because I think that there's a part of me that almost feels a little bit of like, I don't even know if I want to feel that, a little bit of despair, because it's like, I feel like, here, I'll be honest with you guys. Oh, Carl. Yeah. I feel like this is such me having such a big head, but I'll just be real with you guys. I'm a good dad. I'm better than 99% of the dads out there. I love my wife. I didn't leave her. I have my kids. I don't beat them for the most part, apart from spankings or whatever. I love them. I'm present, and I know how much I still struggle with this because I have all girls. I wanted all boys. Most of you know that. I have all girls. And I don't know if they're more emotional than boys or not. We're kind of more egalitarian today about all that stuff. But it feels like they are very, very emotional all the time. And especially when they're emotional, it's still so important to me that they are obedient and they are respectful. And there's a big part of me that feels like I need to show them that even when you're feeling very sad, you still need to be obedient. And you still need to show respect to people. And so I come on very strong a lot of times. And it's hard for me to think, man, how do we all of us, as people, because we're not all counselors, and we're all so imperfect in our own way, how do we do this with our kids? And I think every single one of us needs to just start, and you're going to horribly screw it up the first time you do it. It's like I tell our kids all the time, hey, you just need to tell somebody about Jesus or invite someone to church or tell anyone to pray for them, and you are going to bomb when you do it. It's going to be awkward, you're going to mess it up, you're going to feel so embarrassed, and your gut reaction is going to be, I'm never going to do that again, right? Because a young person sharing about Jesus for the first time, especially today, they feel so, it normally doesn't go well. They get turned down, they awkwardly talk about the Trinity, and they don't even know what the Trinity is, and they have no, and they don't want to do it again. I'll tell them, I'll be like, you do it, it's probably going to go horrible. That's okay. You do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you're going to get better about it, and pretty soon you're going to be bold and confident in telling your friends about Jesus and inviting them to church. You're going to be the Ariana Thomas. I always brag on Ariana Thomas. She'd invite hundreds of people to church. And hundreds would say no to her, but there was 10 that said yes. And she'd bring them. You know what I'm saying? And she'd have all these guests kind of a thing, but you didn't know that there was like 90 to 200 that said no to her in a very embarrassing fashion, but she just got to the point because she did it. And so for us, you just got to start somewhere. And you may do something, you may try and awkwardly pull this feelings wheel out with your like teenager, and they're like, what the heck? No, I'm not doing, you know, and it's like, it just bombs, doesn't go well, but like, trying to have these conversations with your kids is so important. So this is what we're going to try just for this the last part here, just this little bit, is I want us to try, this is probably so dumb, but we're going to try it. We're going to try just a little bit of role playing, okay? So permission for this to go horribly wrong. I hope you feel that's kind of the theme of tonight, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to have somebody at your table is going to be the actor. And they're going to be your teenager. Okay? The teenager in your life. Okay? Whatever that is. Your grandkid, you know, your kid, some person that you're just friends with, you know, teenagers or whatever that. And they are going to be experiencing a heightened emotional moment. Okay? And you, as many of us can go around, it doesn't need to be super long, you are going to practice verbalizing to them some of the stuff that we just talked about. I don't want to tell you exactly what you need to say, but the idea is that you're listening, okay? You're empathizing with them. It's not the immediate authoritarian response to pick up your shoes. Maybe you pull out the feelings wheel, but I just want you to, very semi-practical, it's going to feel so ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. I want you to go ahead and do it anyways, because the challenge for this week is to go home and actually maybe try this with your kid or with a kid in your life. If you have a child, 100% there will be a moment this next week where they respond very inappropriately to you, okay? Or something happens. It's not possible. I know all of your teenagers, okay? They will do it. And it'll be your opportunity to maybe practice this a little bit with them and actually to do it. And so we're going to try it right here, and it'll be ridiculous, but hey, we're all going to be ridiculous doing it. And then you're going to go and you're actually going to try it sometime this week with your kid, and you're going to fail and it's going to be horrible, but you're not going to give up. You're going to keep doing it because you know it's important for them to be gritty and to build up that resiliency. So does every table, everybody pick their actor? Who's going to be the teenager that's frustrated?